Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening. All right, welcome to tonight's special program honoring CHM's 2022 Fellow Award honorees. Now we're going to turn to our final award honoree this evening, Leonard Kleinrock. When Leonard was 6 years old, he was growing up in Manhattan. He built a crystal radio out of some parts that he found. And he says, and I think we'll all agree, that that was the day he was an engineer. It's pretty exciting. Leonard went on to pioneer the mathematical theory of computer networks and uncovered and delivered the fundamental principles that apply to the design of packet switching and packet switch networks like the internet is today. He's the head of the Network Measurement Center at ARPANET in the late 1960s, and he was a mentor to a generation of networking pioneers. And in 1980s, he was very influential and was a key voice in expanding the use of the internet and the always-on world within which we all live today. And then there is this moment in time on October 29th, 1969, where the first connection was made between host computers on ARPANET, which of course was the precursor to the internet that we live with today. The connection was made from Len's lab at UCLA to SRI International, which was then part of Stanford. And from those two nodes, and then Santa Barbara and Utah, we have the internet and the wired planet that we live with today. So thank you so much for what you did then and what you've delivered to the world. As a faculty member throughout his career at UCLA, Len has trained generations of students across the world on networking and infrastructure in this area. Those students and their students have been instrumental in designing the way networks of all kinds function, and now we have billions of people around the world connected. So let's hear a little bit about Len from Len, please.
I came out in August of '63 with my I had 2 children by this time, drove across the country, started working at UCLA, started teaching information theory and some minimal networking theory, but it wasn't all the vogue at the time. Nobody in the industry was interested in data networks. And in particular, the largest network company in the world, AT&T, they said, no, it's never going to work. And even if it does work, we want nothing to do with it. But I enjoy teaching. You're working with brilliant students, undergraduate and graduate. That keeps you young, and so that's the reason I stayed. Dwight Eisenhower decided to create this Advanced Research Projects Agency, which was going to bring back the prime position the United States had in science and technology. And sure enough, the economics and the technology supported the introduction of a real network. It was decided that UCLA would be the first node because me and my group had the expertise to do the Network Measurement Center, stress the network, test it, measure it, and to think about what the fundamentals were. The second node was to be SRI, third node, University of California, Santa Barbara, and the fourth node in December of '69 would be University of Utah. How do networks get created? Well, there's sort of 3 phases. There are the embryonic networks, which the ARPANET was to begin with. It was just sort of being designed and fiddled with and changed. And then there's a prototype network, which you deploy to a user group where they understand there will be failures, but it'll be up most of the time. And then when it's proven, it becomes a production network, which the internet is today. My mother died 2 months shy of 100. 2 months shy of 100. And she was using the internet. And that gave me great pleasure. While she was alive, I make sure to make the point that everyone uses the internet.
This is amazing. That was not that long ago. So here to share more about Professor Kleinrock is Nick McEwen. He's a good friend of mine. Nick is now a Senior Vice President and General Manager of Network and Edge Group at Intel, working for Pat Gelsinger to do the nation's work. I really appreciate that, Nick. But he's, I'd say, best known for his professorship at Stanford, where he has been since 1995. And along the way, founded 5 network companies, including Barefoot Networks. He's received dozens of industry awards, including the 2021 IEEE Alexander Graham Bell Medal. Nick is a member of the U.S. National Academy of Engineering and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and a fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering. Please welcome and joining my friend Nick McEwen.
Wow, this is such an honor to, I get to talk about one of my heroes. So many of us remember many life-changing moments, right? The moment we saw Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon, 9/11, Gangnam Style. So a life-changing moment for me happened in 1989. I started as a PhD student at Berkeley, and my PhD advisor, Jean Morin, handed me a book. That book was Len Kleinrock's Queuing Systems, Volume 1, Theory. The book was about queuing theory, Markov chains, Markov processes. And up until that moment, I'd been studying and learning about how the internet worked. But what that book taught me, Len, was why it worked. It taught me about that intuition and that theory, and taught me that all future networks would be built on packet switching and message switching, as you had said. It was a huge revelation to me, and I devoured that book. I must have read it 10 times from cover to cover. I spent the next 10 years studying and using those ideas in my research at Berkeley and then Stanford, and then trying to put them into practice. But I've got to confess, that last chapter, under the GG1Q, I never really kind of understood that. Lindley equations and Kingman algebra, I never quite got that, but we won't tell anyone about that. So Len distilled into those pages the ideas and the intuition that inspired me and countless students of packet switching, queuing theory, and the internet for years to come. So a few years later, I heard Len give a talk about the power of a network. This simple and intuitive metric of any packet switched network is defined to be the average throughput, how much stuff you can push through it, divided by the delay or the latency of the packets that flow through. Clearly, more throughput is good, more delay is bad, and so the ratio of the two, throughput over delay, is the power. And it would seem obvious that you can just make the power bigger by making the throughput larger, right? Well, it turns out, and we know this from driving on the road, that if you put more stuff in, the queues get longer and then things get slower. So there's an optimization point. And this is congestion. And it brought the internet to its knees on many occasions. So Len made an enduring observation, a simple principle, if you like, that guides how congestion is controlled in the internet to this day. And that is, keep the pipes full, just full, but no fuller. In other words, fill the pipes, but not the queues. If you can hold it at that point, you can maximize the network power. This beautifully simple, inspiring principle has inspired many researchers and those who design congestion control algorithms to this day. But for me, the most memorable and inspiring moment with Len was when I visited him at UCLA about 10 years ago. There he was sitting at his desk with a pencil and a clean sheet of paper, with that kind of slightly cheeky twinkle in his eye, creating something new before he went off to do karate. Next door was that node that we just saw, the interface message processor, or IMP, where he and his students sent that first message in 1969. I asked him if we could power it on to see if it still works. He thought the dust might catch on fire. So I took a picture of Len standing next to that first node. And that night I showed it to my family and I said, This is a guy I met today who helped start the internet. And now, if there isn't someone who helped change the world, then I don't know who that is, but Len Kleinrock. So Len, congratulations on this award. You've always been my hero, and thank you for inspiring me and every student, researcher, and engineer of the internet for over 50 years.
Well done, well done. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nick. And here to present Leonard Kleinrock with the 2022 Fellow Award is Jim Carosa. Jim is a distinguished university professor of computer science and associate chancellor at UMass Amherst. He's a visiting researcher at IBM Research, Technicolor Research in RIA, and the Sorbonne. I'm not very good with languages, Sorbonne University. From 2015 to 2019, Jim served as the assistant director at the National Science Foundation, where he led the Directorate of Computer and Information Science and Engineering. And in 2018, he served as an assistant director in the White House Office of Science, Technology, and Policy, where we need good people, for sure. He's received numerous awards, including the IEEE Infocom Award and the ACM CGRAPH Lifetime Achievement Award. CCOM, excuse me. Please welcome Jim Carosa.
Well, thank you very much. And I, like Nick, I'm incredibly honored to be here to help honor one of my heroes as well. An item actually that Daniel left out of my bio, and thank you for the introduction, is that Len is my academic grandfather. One of Len's PhD students, Yekiam Yamini, was my PhD advisor when I was a grad student at Columbia. And I've never been able to sort of sit on Len's knee and sort of bounce up and down and look up at him adoringly. I'll say actually that I met Anne, Len's real granddaughter here, who I imagine had that great pleasure of bouncing and looking up at him adoringly. But, you know, that's what grandkids do with their grandparents. But I, like countless others, have looked up to Len and have admired him for my entire career. So Len, I'm also hoping maybe I can get a photo of me sitting on your knee when we're out there, okay? We heard about Len's many pioneering, truly groundbreaking scientific achievements in the video in Nick McEwen's remarks. Nick, if you've only read Len's first volume of Queuing Systems 10 times, I read it 20 times. That's how important that work is. The impact of Len's work on the field of networking and networking's impact on society has been phenomenal. But there's also been a personal impact that Len has had on so many people. People like those who've worked directly with Len, like more than his 50 PhD students. I think there are at least 5 or 6 of them here tonight. I know a number of them very well, and they've all talked uniformly about how he's impacted and changed and profoundly changed their lives and shaped their lives by working with him. And all of them, many of them, have gone on to do really amazing things. They're the people that have worked with Len in many of the companies that he's founded, or in technical service organizations or societies where he's had leadership roles. People like me, like Nick, who've been inspired by Len's research and hold his work and his legacy really in awe. Len's been a role model and an inspiration for me and for countless others throughout our careers. And then there are those people, other people, countless others, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, who've been students in Len's classes, or who've learned, been inspired about networking through Len's writings, his research papers, his books, and all his terrific writing. So we're here today to honor Len for his pioneering research achievements and his role in the ARPANET and expanding the internet. But let's also remember that these amazing achievements are amplified even further by the countless people whose lives he's touched and whose careers, like mine, he's really inspired. And it's really been amply evident to me, listening to all the speakers here tonight, about inspiring role models and how important mentoring is for people to look up to admire, to learn from, and that these are tremendous engines for pushing forward people and pushing a field forward. So I, like many others, are particularly indebted to Len. Oh, you're over there now. Particularly indebted to Len for all of that. And so I want to say from myself, from Nick, and from the hundreds of thousands of other people whose lives you've impacted, to say thank you. So now it's time for the presentation of the Fellow Award, which we have here. And I'll read it. Leonard Kleinrock, on behalf of the Computer History Museum, it's my distinct honor and pleasure to present you with the 2022 Fellow Award for your pioneering work on the mathematical theory of computer networks and roles in the ARPANET and expanding the internet.
So Nick and Jim, I'm going to tear up in a minute. This has been overwhelming. I want to thank you, and I want to thank my colleagues, my students, my family, and all of you for coming here. This has been an amazing, amazing evening with all of my co-inductees. Congratulations to all of you to join the ranks of the Computer History Museum Fellows. Thank you very much. Today's younger generation can't imagine a time when the internet did not exist, but there was a beginning. And it was initiated by the appearance in late 1969 of the ARPANET, the first large-scale, heterogeneous, multi-purpose computer network. And exactly 2 weeks from today will be the 53rd anniversary of that event. So we celebrate at that point. Now, the creation of the internet was clearly a joint effort. We've heard about all the other inductees and past Computer History Museum Fellows. It's not an individual effort, it's a joint effort. It's an effort by an army of recognized pioneers, a number of whom have already been inducted into the CHM Fellows. People like Larry Roberts, Bob Kahn, Vince Cerf, Tim Berners-Lee, Paul Barron, Bob Metcalf, Bob Taylor, Louis Buzan, the list goes on. However, this heralded technology was preceded by much earlier thinkers, visionaries, who foresaw many aspects of today's globally connected world. Indeed, the vision of the internet had been articulated some years ago by a particular individual who said, and I'm going to paraphrase it, it will be possible for a businessman in New York to create a message and using a device no larger than a watch, no more expensive than a watch, to instantly launch that message across the ocean to his colleague in London, perhaps, or anywhere, and be able to send any picture, drawing, text, speech, instantly. That was Nikola Tesla in 1908. The vision was there. We didn't invent it. After him, H.G. Wells in 1938, Vannevar Bush in 1945, Licklider in 1960. The vision was marching along. It was going to happen. And in fact, it just had to wait for the technology to catch up. So, whereas we honor all of the pioneers of that period and more recently, none of us needed to have been born. None of us. And this would have happened. We just had to wait for the technology to catch up to the vision. We were lucky. Thank you. You make me cry. But it's an interesting thought. You should realize that. So my humble role in this came out of a lifelong pursuit of following my curiosity. That was mentioned more than once tonight. Following my curiosity and asking how and why do magical technologies work? The how is all about playing with, building, destroying, probing, experimenting, and testing gadgets to see how they work. The why is all about understanding why they behave that way. And for me, that led to physics and mathematics to offer the explanation and the understanding. And in my mind, there's enormous power in mastering the theoretical side of a problem and also gaining an intuitive grasp and understanding of the behavior of the system. That's a winning combination. Many successful computer scientists are excellent at one, but not necessarily the other. And to have both is truly powerful. Claude Shannon was a master at that, and he taught me some of the fine points of that approach. Happily, my own trajectory has always combined a rich mixture of theory and basically strong physical intuition. As you heard, it started with my discovery of the magic of radio. When as a young kid in elementary school, I was reading a Superman comic book. What else did you do in those days? And I happened to see plans for building a crystal radio, something called a crystal radio. And you could build it, as you were told, with free items in your Manhattan tenement apartment. Except I must admit, among other things, I stole the earphone from the candy store down the street. I studied electronics from a large library book I got and from the RCA receiving tube manual. Does anybody remember that? Yeah, what a man, you ought to look it up. It taught you everything while selling you vacuum tubes. That trajectory continued as I enrolled as a CCNY college student, whereby I went to night school for my entire electrical engineering degree. Who goes to night school for an EE degree? Crazies, dropouts, poor, dedicated students, and GIs coming back from World War II. And those guys and gals, they knew what they wanted, as opposed to somehow the unfocused undergraduates. That maturity really matters. It does condition where you're going and why you're going there. All through college, I also worked as a full-time assistant electrical engineer. In the daytime, working with seasoned engineers, building real-world systems. What an amazing and valuable experience. Then when I got to MIT, there was Claude Shannon promoting the same mixed approach I've been talking about. Theoretical, mathematical mastery, and intuitive physical understanding. That led me to choose as my PhD research problem, as you heard, the creation of a mathematical theory of computer networks. Here was a problem that was unmined, important, and for which I had an approach. And that approach was to introduce and use queuing theory as the main mathematical tool. This was a challenging theoretical endeavor enriched with real-world applications. From that to the ARPANET was a natural and gratifying progression, and you've heard enough about that. Now, at the 20th anniversary of the ARPANET, I wrote a homely poem glorifying the magnificence of queuing theory. And I hope you'll forgive me for torturing you with it herewith. The title is Ode to a Queue. Thank you. In the 20 years of funding, many fields has DARPA led, but the finest thing that they did bring was the analytic thread. By that I mean they nurtured quantitative research tools, and they always felt for all their gelt, they got principles and rules. Indeed, a wealth of knowledge was uncovered and was new, and the common thread with which we led was the analytic queue. Now, a queue may have one server. If there's more than one, they form a team. Its dearest wish is just to fish in a quiet Poisson stream. If you want to model networks or a complex data flow, a queue's the key to help you see all the things you need to know. So the next time you feel lonely and wonder what to do, you'll soon feel fine if you join the line of an analytic queue. Now, you just made a big mistake. You enjoyed that, I got another one. At another occasion, I tormented a similar audience to this particular with more verse, which I can't resist stating now, because as that tale tells, it tells of the early days of networking, and its final message is so appropriate for this occasion. Those early days were golden, and the challenges were huge. We could have taken shortcuts and create a frightful kludge, or we could have gotten patents to enrich our treasure chest, but instead we did it proper and succeeded in our quest. The packets, they went streaming. They went flying hop by hop. And when the gigapipes were full, was no way to stop. The flow control protect us as apps did quickly grow. The younger kids are now in charge. It's time that we let go. So in summary, nurture your curiosity by pursuing the how and the why, and thus master theoretical understanding while enriching your physical intuition. Then shoot for the moon, and if you get there, then get the heck out of there and pass it on to the next generation. Thank you very much.
You know, we're going to ask all the fellows to join us up here, but I got to tell you, there is this saying about history, and I think you nailed it, Professor. It's not about the past. It's about the present, having a conversation with the past. You go back to Tesla. It's so true, this very thoughtful presentation. Thank you so much for what you've done. So here we go. As we close our program, we want to welcome the other awardees back on the stage for a moment, please, if we may.
Wonderful. Len, Dan, Adele, and Dawn, thank you for your lifetime of work and impact in computing, which has changed the world in so many positive ways. Thank you for your inspiring messages, including your one word of advice. Going forward, let us follow our fellows' advice to have unquenched curiosity that drives us to ask important questions, and in the face of unanticipated challenges and outcomes, to persevere.
And there's so many life experiences and the wisdom that each of you shared in the context of the word that you chose. This is a museum tradition that our honorees and guests choose a word and then an inspiring, ideally, story that will motivate younger people and the next generation to be thinking forward in the future. There's so much that you have presented in your words to inspire future generations. So we'd like to thank you for that. Great. Thank you.
Let's give a final round of applause.
Well, I want to thank everyone, and obviously this is a tremendous evening, and this is an opportunity for us to capture these moments. This is all part of our permanent collection in the archive, so you've witnessed the capturing of some amazing stories in honor of some amazing individuals and their contributions to the world that we all live in today.